night was quiet, almost too quiet. The small town slept under a sky full of stars and the streets were empty. Only one old streetlight flickered near the edge of the road, making shadows dance on the ground. Inside a lonely house on the corner lived a man named Daniel. He was not rich, not famous, just an ordinary human who liked peace. But this night, peace would not stay. Daniel sat near the window with a cup of tea in his hand. He liked to watch the sky before going to sleep. But suddenly he heard something strange. It was not the sound of the wind, not the sound of animals. It was different, soft but sharp, like a whisper mixed with a cry. Daniel frowned and placed his cup down. He listened carefully, his heart beating a little faster. The sound came again. This time from outside his house. It was closer now, like someone dragging weak steps on the wooden porch. Daniel stood up and walked slowly to the door. Every step felt heavy, because something inside him said this was not normal. He reached the door and placed his hand on the handle. For a moment he hesitated, thinking, should I open it? What if it's danger? But curiosity was stronger than fear. He slowly pulled the door open. At first he saw nothing but darkness. The cold air rushed in, making him shiver. But then his eyes fell to the ground. There, right in front of his door, was a figure, thin, trembling and strange. It was not human, yet not completely unfamiliar. A tall being with pale skin that seemed to glow under the moonlight. Her eyes were large and filled with fear, and in her arms, she carried something wrapped in cloth. Daniel froze, unable to speak. The figure was a mother, an alien mother. Her hands shook as she held the small bundle close to her chest. The baby inside let out a weak cry, high and soft. Daniel's heart jumped. He could not believe what he was seeing. A real alien standing at his door, helpless and fragile. The mother looked at him with desperate eyes. Her lips moved, but no human words came out. Instead, a strange sound, soft and broken, spilled from her mouth. It was like a plea, like a final request. Daniel stepped back, fear and shock mixing inside him. Every story he had ever read about aliens rushed into his mind. Some said they were invaders. Some said they were monsters. But this was not a monster. This was a mother, weak and hungry, clutching her baby as if it was her last breath. The mother took one shaky step forward. Her body swayed as if she might fall with trembling arms. She placed the bundle gently at Daniel's feet. The baby made a soft noise, not like any human baby, but still innocent. Then, with a heavy sigh, the mother's knees gave out. She collapsed on the wooden porch, her body hit the ground softly, and she lay still, breathing but weak. Daniel gasped and bent down. He touched the baby first. Its skin was slightly different, smooth, almost shining but warm. The baby opened its eyes for a moment, big and bright, looking directly at him. Something inside Daniel's heart melted. It was not fear anymore, it was a strange pull, the kind of pull one feels when life asks for protection. He then looked at the mother. Her face showed pain but also peace, as if leaving the baby here was her last hope. Daniel whispered to himself, "What is this? Why me?" The night answered with silence, only broken by the baby's small sounds. Behind him the house looked safe and warm. In front of him the night looked endless and cold. And lying on his porch was a mystery that could change his life forever. Daniel felt his hands shaking as he lifted the baby from the ground. The tiny creature fit in his arms like it belonged there. The baby's soft hum calmed him. He looked again at the mother, her chest rising slowly with breath. She was not dead, but she was close to losing all strength. The wind blew harder, making the trees outside creak. Daniel's mind filled with questions. Why had she come here? What chased her to the point that she had to leave her child at a stranger's door? And what danger might now follow them? Still, at that moment, he knew one thing. He could not leave them outside. Fear whispered to him, warning him of risk. But humanity shouted louder. He opened the door wider and stepped aside. He spoke softly, not sure if she could understand. "Come inside." "You're safe here." The mother's eyes blinked slowly, as if she heard his kindness with the last bit of her strength. She dragged herself a little closer to the door. Daniel bent down, took her arm gently, and helped her inside. The door closed behind them with a soft thud. The strange night was not over. It had only just begun. The house was quiet, but Daniel's heart was not. He stood in the small living room with the alien baby in his arms, and the weak mother lying on the old couch. The fire in the fireplace gave off a faint glow, making shadows dance across the walls. Daniel could not believe what he was doing. He had just let two strangers into his home, strangers not from his world, not even from his kind. The baby stared at him with big, bright eyes. Its small hands reached out, grasping at the air as if asking for comfort. Daniel gently rocked it, unsure if it liked being held. To his surprise, the baby's small cries softened, turning into a soft humming sound. It was not human, but it was not frightening either. It was simply innocent. He looked at the mother again. Her skin seemed pale, her breathing slow. She had given her last strength to reach his door. Her eyes opened halfway, watching him with silent trust. She did not speak his language, but Daniel understood what she was asking. She wanted him to care for her baby, at least for now. Inside Daniel's head, a storm began. What am I doing? This is crazy, he thought. If someone finds out, I'll be in danger. Maybe even hunted. He looked down at the baby again, its tiny fingers wrapping around one of his. The touch was warm, real, alive. And in that moment, all his fears clashed with a powerful feeling. A choice was standing in front of him. He could close the door to this problem. He could leave them outside and pretend nothing happened. No one would ever know, and he could return to his quiet, simple life. But his eyes told him the truth. If he left them out there, they would not survive the night. Daniel placed the baby carefully on the couch beside the mother. Then he stepped back, running both hands through his hair. He walked in circles, his heart racing. What should I do? He whispered to himself. The crackle of the fire answered with silence. Only the soft breath of the baby and the faint sighs of the mother filled the room. Daniel stopped near the window. He pulled the curtain slightly and looked outside. The night was still, but he felt something lurking. He did not know why, but he felt danger close. Maybe she had been followed. Maybe more would come. He had no way of knowing when he turned back. The mother's weak hand lifted slowly. Her fingers trembled as she pointed to the baby. Her lips moved, releasing strange, soft sounds. It was not words he could understand. But the meaning was clear. She was asking him, begging him. Protect my child, Daniel froze, his chest heavy with emotion. He had never been a father, never even thought of caring for a child. But now, in this strange moment under this strange sky, he felt something inside him change. The baby needed him, the mother trusted him, and he could not walk away. He moved closer and spoke softly. I don't know if you understand me, but I will not leave you. Not tonight. The mother's eyes blinked slowly. As if she heard him, she gave the smallest nod, then closed her eyes again. Sinking into weak sleep, Daniel sighed deeply. He sat on the chair near the couch. Still watching both of them, the firelight flickered, making the room feel warmer, but his mind was far from calm. He thought about the news he had read weeks ago. Strange sightings in the sky, lights moving where planes could not fly. People laughed, called them hoaxes. But now Daniel knew the truth. They were real. And two of them were lying in his house. The baby moved slightly, making a small humming sound. Daniel carefully lifted it back into his arms. It was lighter than a human baby, but warm. Its eyes blinked slowly, then closed, falling asleep against his chest. Daniel felt something he had never felt before, a strange mix of fear and peace, danger and purpose. He looked at the mother again, her face calm but pale. He whispered to himself, What am I going to do with you? But deep inside he already knew he was not going to leave them, not going to hand them over. He had made his choice. As the night stretched on, Daniel stayed awake. He listened carefully to the silence outside, waiting for any sound, any sign of trouble. The wind moved the trees and an owl called in the distance, but no footsteps came, no strange lights appeared. For now it was just him, the fire, and the two fragile lives that had entered his world. When the baby stirred again, Daniel gently rocked it. He whispered softly, Don't worry. I'll keep you safe. The words surprised him. He had spoken them without thinking, and yet, as the baby calmed and pressed against him, he knew he meant every single one. The night was still dangerous, the future uncertain. But Daniel had crossed the line. He had chosen to protect, he had chosen to care, and that choice would change his life forever. Morning light touched the curtains, but Daniel had not slept. He sat in the old chair, the alien baby resting against his chest. The fire had turned into ashes, but the room still carried a faint warmth. Every time the baby moved or sighed, Daniel's heart grew tighter. He had never held a child before, and now he was holding one not even from his own world. The mother lay on the couch, breathing slow and shallow. Her skin had lost color, her body weak, but she was alive. and sometimes her eyes opened just enough to check on her baby. Each time she saw the child in Daniel's arms, her face softened. It was a silent trust. A trust that Daniel had never asked for but had been given anyway. The baby began to stir. Its small hands waving gently, Daniel rocked it slowly. Unsure if he was doing it right, the baby let out a strange sound, not a cry, not laughter, something in between. It was soft, musical, like a hum. Daniel froze for a moment, surprised, then he smiled slightly. "So that's how you speak," he whispered. The child responded with another hum, pressing its head lightly against his chest. Daniel felt his heart melt in a way he could not explain. It was not human, yet the bond forming between them felt completely human. Pure, natural, undeniable. He stood and walked carefully to the kitchen, still holding the baby. He tried to prepare something simple: warm milk, bread, water. He had no idea what the baby could eat, but when he dipped his finger in the milk and touched it near the child's lips, the baby accepted. It drank a little, slow but eager, then let out a soft, satisfied sound. Daniel laughed quietly, a nervous laugh mixed with relief. "You're hungry just like any baby," he said. The mother on the couch moved slightly, her hand lifting weakly. Daniel walked back and knelt beside her, showing her that the baby was safe. Her large eyes blinked open, and for the first time, Daniel thought he saw tears, not human tears, but shining drops at the edge of her eyes. She reached for the child, but her strength failed. Daniel leaned forward, letting her touch the baby's small hand. For a moment, all three were connected in silence. No words, no language, only trust. Hours passed slowly, the house wrapped in quiet. Daniel placed the baby in a blanket on the couch and covered the mother with another. He sat back, watching them both. Something inside him had changed overnight. He was no longer just a lonely man in a quiet house. He was a protector, a caretaker, maybe even something more. The baby moved again. Its eyes opening wide, it looked at Daniel, then reached out with both tiny arms. Daniel hesitated, then lifted it once more. As soon as he did, the baby rested calmly, its strange glowing eyes closing in peace. Daniel whispered, "You trust me already, don't you?" The baby's small hum answered softly, as if it truly understood for the first time in years. Daniel felt a purpose burning inside him. The world outside was unknown, and danger might come at any moment. But in that quiet morning, holding the fragile child in his arms, Daniel knew he was no longer alone. The bond had begun, a bond stronger than fear, and it would guide him through whatever waited in the shadows of the coming nights. The day moved slowly, but Daniel could not rest. He kept glancing at the couch where the alien mother lay, and at the small bundle in his arms. The baby was calmer now, but the mother's weak body worried him. Her chest rose and fell with effort, as if every breath was a fight. He wanted to help, but how could he heal someone not from his world? As the afternoon sun painted the room in gold, the mother stirred. Her eyes opened wider than before, glowing faintly in the light. Daniel leaned forward quickly, placing the baby beside her. The moment the child touched her side, the mother's hand lifted and rested weakly over it. Her lips moved, releasing strange sounds, soft and broken. At first, Daniel thought it was just noise, but soon he realized it was something more. She was trying to speak, not in his language, but in her own. The sounds rose and fell like music, filled with meaning even if he could not understand. Daniel frowned, focusing hard. The mother looked at him, her eyes sharp and pleading. It was as if she wanted him to know something important. Slowly, Daniel noticed patterns. The same sound repeated when she looked at the baby. Another sound came when she looked toward the door, her eyes filled with fear. Daniel whispered to himself, "She's telling me." They were chased. The mother's face tightened, and she gave a weak nod. His heart raced. So he was right. She was not here by accident. She was running from something dangerous. Daniel sat back, the truth pressing heavy on his chest. This was not just a lost traveler. She had enemies, and if they were chasing her, they might already be close. The thought made him shiver. He looked at the baby, then at the mother again. Her eyes begged him silently, "Please protect. Please keep safe." Daniel spoke slowly, unsure if she could understand. "You came here for a reason. You left your baby with me because you had no choice." The mother blinked, a tear-like drop sliding down her cheek. Her hand moved again, forming a weak gesture. She pressed her fingers to her chest, then pushed her hand toward him. It was a motion of giving, a motion of trust. Daniel felt his throat tighten. She was not only asking for help, she was placing her child's fate in his hands. The baby made a soft hum, almost as if echoing her words. Daniel's heart swelled with fear and determination at the same time. He whispered, "I don't know what I'm doing, but I won't let anything happen to you." For a moment, the mother closed her eyes, her face relaxing, as if his promise gave her peace. The evening shadows grew longer, stretching across the floor. Daniel stood and checked the windows again. Outside, the world seemed quiet, but he could not shake the feeling that danger was near. He locked the doors, shut the curtains, and returned to the couch. The mother's voice rose again, weak but insistent. This time, Daniel felt something deeper. Her words were not just sounds, they carried emotions. Images, almost. He could not explain it, but somehow his mind touched hers for a brief moment. He saw flashes, dark shapes, glowing eyes, tall figures moving in the night. He saw fear, running, hiding, a desperate escape, and then he saw the baby. The last hope, the last light. Daniel gasped and held his head. The connection broke, leaving only silence. The mother lay still, exhausted. Her message delivered. Now Daniel knew the truth. She was hunted, the baby was in danger, and now so was he. But he also knew something else. He could not turn back. The bond was already formed, the promise already spoken, and no matter what came from the shadows, he would face it. Because the helpless mother had trusted him, and the small alien child had already made his heart their home. The night returned with heavy silence. Daniel sat near the window, the curtains half closed, his ears alert to every sound. The alien mother slept weakly on the couch, the baby resting close to her chest, but Daniel could not rest. Not with the images still burning in his mind from the strange vision she had shared. Dark shapes, glowing eyes, hunters moving through the night. He could almost feel them drawing closer. The clock ticked slowly, each sound echoing louder than usual. Daniel's hands were tight on the armrest, his eyes refusing to close. Then it came, the first sign. A faint hum, distant but sharp, carried through the wind. It was not a car, not a plane, not anything he had heard before. Daniel froze, every muscle in his body stiff. The baby stirred, as if it sensed something. Its soft hum turned uneasy. The mother's eyes opened weakly, and Daniel saw fear flash inside them. She lifted her trembling hand toward the door. Her lips moved, forming broken sounds that Daniel could not understand. But he knew the meaning. They are here. Daniel's heart pounded hard. He rushed to the fireplace, grabbed the metal poker, the only weapon in reach. He looked at the mother and baby, whispering quickly, "Stay quiet. Stay hidden." He lifted the rug on the floor and opened the old wooden door to the basement. "Down here," he urged, helping her as carefully as he could. The mother struggled, but her will was strong. She clutched her baby and followed him down the creaking stairs. The basement was cold and smelled of dust. Daniel guided them to a corner, covering them with blankets and boxes. He knelt in front of the mother, his voice low. No sound, no movement. "I'll keep them away." Her eyes glowed faintly, full of worry but also trust. She placed her hand gently on his arm. A silent thank you. Daniel nodded and climbed back up, closing the trapdoor quietly. The house above felt different now. The air itself seemed heavy, pressing on his chest. Then came the knock, slow and firm. Daniel froze near the door, the poker tight in his hand. The knock came again, this time louder, shaking the wood. A voice followed, not human, deep and metallic. "Give them to us," it demanded. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He did not answer. The voice repeated, louder. "Give us the mother and child, human, and you will be spared." His heart raced, fear crawling up his spine. But his mind shouted louder. He had made a promise. He would not give them away. Shadows moved outside the window, tall and unnatural. Lights flickered, glowing blue against the walls. Daniel crouched low, keeping his eyes on every corner. The hunters were circling his home. Their heavy steps echoed against the wooden porch. Every sound made his chest tighter. The doorknob rattled. Daniel gripped the poker harder, sweat running down his face. The voice came once more, calm but threatening. "You cannot hide them, human. They do not belong to you." Daniel whispered under his breath. "They do now." The next moment, glass shattered. A window broke as a long, dark hand reached inside. Daniel swung the poker with all his strength. The sharp clang echoed as metal hit bone-like skin. A screech followed, high and furious. The shadow pulled back, but others pressed closer. Daniel's chest heaved. his heart exploding with fear and courage at the same time. He knew he was only one man against something greater, but he also knew the mother and child were depending on him, and that thought made his arm strong, his spirit unshaken. The hunters hissed and growled outside, but Daniel stood tall in the middle of the room. The fire behind him cast his shadow against the walls. He was ready tonight. A simple human had become a shield, and the battle for survival had begun. The hunters pressed against the house, their heavy steps shaking the porch. Daniel stood in the middle of the room, the fireplace glowing behind him, the iron poker still in his grip. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. He was one man alone, facing creatures from another world, but behind the trapdoor, a weak mother and her child trusted him with their lives, and that trust gave him strength. The door creaked as a shadow forced its way inside. A tall figure stepped into the room, its eyes glowing faint blue, its body slim but powerful. It hissed, the sound like metal scraping stone. Daniel's knees trembled, but he raised the poker high. "I won't let you take them," he whispered. Even though his voice shook, the creature tilted its head. Almost amused, it stepped forward, its clawed hand reaching for him. Daniel swung with every ounce of fear and courage in his body. The metal cracked against the arm, sparks flying as the creature screeched. The sound rattled the windows, but Daniel did not stop. He swung again, driving the monster back toward the broken window. Another shadow climbed in through the side, taller and faster. Daniel turned quickly, grabbing a chair with his free hand and smashing it across the figure's chest. Wood splintered. The creature staggered, and Daniel gasped for air. Pain shot through his arms. But he refused to fall. The monsters had power, but he had something they did not. A reason to fight. In the basement, the baby hummed nervously, the mother holding it close. She could hear the chaos above, her body weak but her eyes burning with fear for the man who stood alone. She whispered her strange words into the child's ear, as if passing courage through her bloodline upstairs. Daniel stumbled backward as the two creatures hissed in unison. They circled him, their claws dragging across the wooden floor, leaving deep marks. Daniel's mind raced. He could not fight them forever. He needed an idea. His eyes darted to the fireplace, the flames crackling with power. Yes, he thought. Fire! He grabbed a burning log with his bare hands wrapped in a cloth. Pain seared his skin, but he ignored it. He swung the flaming wood in wide arcs, the fire hissing through the air. The creatures hissed louder, stepping back, their glowing eyes narrowing for the first time. Daniel saw it. They feared the fire. His chest rose and fell with wild breath. Sweat and smoke covered his face, but his eyes shone with determination. "You're not taking them," he shouted, his voice echoing through the small house. He pushed forward, swinging fire in one hand and iron in the other. The creatures shrieked and scrambled, smashing through the broken window and retreating into the night. Silence followed, heavy and broken only by the crackle of flames. Daniel fell to his knees, the burning log dropping safely back into the fireplace. His arms shook, his hands blistered, but he was alive, and more importantly, so were they. Slowly, he lifted the rug and opened the basement door. The mother's glowing eyes stared up at him, wide with worry. Daniel gave a tired smile and whispered, "It's over. For now." She climbed weakly up, still clutching her child when she saw him hurt. Her trembling hand reached out, touching his burned skin gently. Her eyes glistened with something deep, respect, gratitude, and maybe even awe. Daniel realized then what he had done. He was just a man, no special powers, no weapons of war, but he had stood against hunters from another world and forced them back. Not because he was strong, but because he refused to give up. Because a helpless mother and her baby had given him a reason to fight. And in that moment, Daniel understood what it meant to be human. To stand, to protect, to risk everything for someone who could not fight for themselves. The hunters would return. He knew that, but when they did, he would be ready. Because courage was not about winning. It was about refusing to surrender. And tonight, courage had saved them all. The night was finally quiet again. Smoke still lingered in the air, and broken glass lay scattered on the floor. Daniel's arms ached, his hands burned, and his body begged for rest. But his heart was steady, stronger than before. He had faced the impossible, and he had not run. The alien mother sat on the couch, the baby pressed tightly to her chest. Her weak body trembled, but her eyes never left Daniel. There was something new in her gaze, something deep and powerful. It was not only gratitude, It was trust given without words. She had seen his courage, and now she knew her child was safe. Daniel sat across from her, his chest rising and falling with tired breaths. He leaned his head against the wall and closed his eyes for a moment. He could still hear the echo of claws against wood, the screech of voices demanding the child. But he could also hear something else, the soft hum of the baby. The sound was gentle, almost like a lullaby. It made the broken room feel alive again. The mother whispered faintly, her voice weak but steady. Daniel could not understand her words, but he felt them in his heart. She pointed first to the baby, then to him, then placed her hand on her chest. Daniel watched carefully, his tired mind piecing it together. "You want me to be family," he said slowly. The mother's eyes softened, and she gave the smallest nod. Daniel's throat tightened. He had lived years in silence, years alone in this old house. He had never married, never raised children, never thought about what it meant to protect something more important than himself. And yet here he was, holding a bond stronger than blood. A bond born out of fear, courage, and trust. The baby reached out its tiny, glowing hands toward Daniel. He leaned forward and took it gently. The child rested against his chest with peace. As if it had always belonged there, Daniel smiled faintly, whispering, "You're safe now, I promise." The baby hummed again, a sound that filled the quiet room with warmth. Outside, the world still carried danger. The hunters had retreated, but they would not give up forever. Daniel knew this was only the beginning, but he also knew something else. He would never abandon them. He had chosen his path, and that path meant standing against the shadows. No matter how dark they were, the mother watched him cradle her child. Her eyes glistened with tears, not of fear, but of relief. She reached out, her weak hand brushing Daniel's shoulder. It was a silent gesture, but he understood. She was no longer alone, and neither was he. Hours passed, and dawn finally touched the windows. The first light of morning spilled across the broken glass, painting the room in gold. Daniel stood by the window, the baby in his arms, the mother resting quietly behind him. The world outside looked the same. Trees, roads, quiet sky, but to him everything had changed. This house was no longer just his. It was theirs, Daniel whispered softly, almost to himself. A family. The word felt strange on his tongue, but it felt right. He turned back to the couch, meeting the mother's eyes. She gave the faintest smile, and for the first time, Daniel smiled too. Not a nervous smile, not a tired one, but a true smile. The danger would come again, he knew that. But now he had something worth fighting for. Not out of duty, not out of fear, but out of love, one human. One alien mother and her child. Different worlds, different blood, but one bond. A bond strong enough to stand against the universe. And so in that quiet morning, Daniel understood. He was no longer just a man in a lonely house. He was protector. He was guardian. He was father. And together they were a new family.